What would you do when you find out? In the Sahara, walking is the fastest way to die. Running is worse. Most people who vanish here don't collapse, they make one small mistake, then another. This is how humans actually survive the world's deadliest desert. The Sahara is so vast that rescue planes can fly directly over you and never see you. Your shadow is your clock. The sand is your enemy. And water is not your first priority. Let's dive in to find out what happens next. It would mean a lot if you subscribe and like.
Surviving the Sahara, life in North Africa's desert. Amari had grown up on the edge of the Sahara Desert, in a small oasis where water was scarce and life was often unforgiving. From the earliest days of his childhood, he had learned to read the signs of the desert the way the wind shaped the sand, the faint tracks of animals hidden in the dunes, and the patterns of the stars that guided travelers across endless miles of sand. Life in the desert was not easy, but it was precise, disciplined, and deeply connected to the land. Every task, every movement, every decision carried weight, and Amari knew this from the stories his elders told him. The Sahara stretched endlessly beyond the oasis, a vast expanse of golden dunes that shifted constantly with the wind. It was beautiful in a way that few could truly appreciate, for its beauty was inseparable from its danger. To live here was to respect the desert at all times, to understand that every sunrise and every sandstorm could change the course of one's day. Amari's family had lived in the Sahara for generations. They were nomads, travelers of the desert, who moved with the seasons, following the scarce resources that life in this land demanded. From the time he was very young, Amari accompanied his father and elder siblings on long treks across the dunes. He learned how to carry water efficiently, how to ration supplies, and how to anticipate the desert's challenges. His father often reminded him that the desert did not forgive mistakes. One misstep can turn a simple journey into a tragedy, he would say. And though these lessons were harsh, Amari felt a profound sense of connection to the land he called home. By the age of 12, Amari could navigate by the stars as well as any adult in his community. He could locate the nearest oasis from the faintest hints of vegetation in the distance. He understood the tracks of desert animals and knew which paths offered shelter from the harsh midday sun. But even with all his knowledge, he had come to realize that surviving the Sahara required more than skill. It required patience, humility, and respect for the forces that shaped the desert. One day, a small group of travelers arrived at the oasis, seeking guidance to cross the desert safely. They were outsiders, unfamiliar with the rhythms of the Sahara, and Amari's father entrusted him with the task of guiding them. The travelers were anxious and unprepared, carrying too little water and unaware of the distances they would have to traverse. Amari approached the task with quiet confidence. He knew that his role was not only to lead them to their destination, but to teach them the ways of the desert so that they could appreciate its demands and its lessons. As they set out across the dunes, Amari observed the travelers closely. He saw fear in their eyes at the first hint of a sandstorm. He saw confusion when the familiar landmarks of the desert shifted with the wind. And yet, he also saw curiosity, the desire to understand the desert, even if it seemed impossible at first. He encouraged them to notice the patterns of the sand, to feel the wind on their skin, and to understand that each challenge could be met with preparation and awareness. The journey was long and arduous. The travelers grew tired under the relentless sun. Their water supply dwindled, and doubts crept into their minds. Dear viewers, could you survive a day in the Sahara with no modern tools? Comment below what you think you would do first. Amari remained steady, setting a pace that balanced progress with caution. He explained to them how the desert had shaped the people who lived within it, how nomadic communities had learned to conserve resources, share knowledge, and adapt to the ever-changing environment. Through his narration, the travelers began to see the desert not as a hostile expanse, but as a teacher. Amari spoke of the oases, those rare patches of water and life scattered across the Sahara. Each oasis was a center of community, a place where families came together, where children learned, and where trade thrived. He described the careful planning required to ensure that resources were not exhausted, how water was rationed, how livestock were tended, and how every action was mindful of survival. He spoke of the stories passed down through generations daily, of travelers who had succeeded and those who had failed, each carrying lessons for those who followed. The nights brought a different set of lessons. As the sun set and temperatures dropped sharply, the desert transformed. The sky became a vast canvas of stars, each one a point of guidance for those who knew how to read them. Amari taught the travelers to navigate using the constellations, to recognize the subtle shifts in the wind, and to find shelter from the cold night air. Around small fires, he shared stories of his community, tales of courage, perseverance, and the deep respect that every desert dweller must hold for the land. With each passing day, the travelers grew stronger and more aware. They began to understand the rhythm of the desert, the slow pace of the dunes, the importance of conserving energy, the necessity of observing and learning from the environment rather than resisting it. Amari watched them with quiet satisfaction, knowing that these lessons would stay with them long after they had left the Sahara. But the desert was not without its dangers. Sandstorms could appear suddenly, reducing visibility to near zero and making even the most familiar paths treacherous. Amari had learned to read the signs the way the wind changed, the patterns in the clouds, and the shifting of the dunes. He guided the travelers through one such storm, teaching them how to protect themselves, maintain their bearings, and remain calm under pressure. By the time the storm passed, the travelers had learned a lesson in resilience that no classroom could teach. Dear friends, leave your suggestions in the comments section. Beyond survival, Amari wanted the travelers to understand the deeper aspects of desert life. He spoke of the importance of community, of how families and tribes supported one another in ways that ensured collective survival. He described the music, the poetry, and the oral traditions that had been preserved for centuries. Every song, every story, every ritual carried meaning, teaching values of respect, patience, and humility. These cultural lessons were as vital to surviving the Sahara as finding water or shelter. As the journey neared its end, the travelers had changed. They were no longer outsiders fearful of the desert. They had gained understanding, appreciation, and a sense of connection to the land. Amari felt a quiet pride, knowing that he had shared not just the skills of survival, but the heart of desert life itself. He knew that the Sahara was more than a place. It was a teacher, a guide, and a mirror for those willing to learn. By the time they reached the next oasis, the travelers were exhausted but transformed. They had witnessed the resilience of a community shaped by harsh conditions, the wisdom passed down through generations, and the beauty of life in the desert that few outsiders ever truly understood. Amari watched them depart, knowing that the lessons they had learned would remain with them forever. The Sahara continued its endless rhythm, dunes rising and falling like the tides of the ocean. Amari returned to his family, continuing the daily tasks that ensured life in the desert persisted. He understood that each day was a journey, each challenge a lesson, and each sunrise an opportunity to learn from the land that had shaped him. For Amari, the desert was home, a place of discipline and wonder. And for those who had journeyed with him, The Sahara had revealed its most important lesson: that survival was not just about enduring harsh conditions, but about understanding, respecting, and connecting with the world around them. Thanks for watching and learning rich African cultures. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new story drops.